Yeah, I'm privileged to work at Mazars. Many accounting firms, and if you're not familiar with accounting firms, we're required at a minimum to get 40 hours of training each year. And many firms look at it as a cost. Mazars, an investment, a true investment. My colleague Brian is part of that team. And yes, we have a team of 2.5, 3. So it's helped a lot. What is this session about? It's a little off mainstream than talent management. It's more about technical L&D. But here are some of the takeaways. Organization is key. In addition, what I would encourage you to think about is, I get this question a lot, is your training knowledge-based or skill-based? And I say yes. Is your training designed for classroom learning or e-learning? And I say yes. Okay. What are some of the goals I had? As I go through these, consider the following. I joined the firm about 3.5 years ago, and we have about 4 service lines: audit, tax, accounting, consulting. And when I joined, we had one loosely organized program of about 20 hours in audit for new hires. That was it. There was no structure for tax. There was no structure for a consulting group. So I was starting with not even a clean slate, no slate whatsoever. So these goals, I think it's the goal of every L&D person. You want to document objectives and outcomes to the discrete detail that you possibly can. Multiple curriculums, I'll get into that in a minute. What do you mean by multiple curriculums, Joe? There's just one. No, for each service line, there's actually 3. Learning plans. I'm a former high school teacher. I'm a big fan of learning plans, very detailed learning plans. Have to be flexible. So many times what we're targeting our audience in terms of learning changes over time. So we have to be nimble, right? We have about 932 people in our firm, about 700 professionals. The other thing to keep in mind is, at the time I joined, we had 5 offices and 3 go-to-market segments. I felt like I was dealing with 15 firms. So it was a challenge to corral all of this. Much of what we do now is simulation-based training. Jim and I were talking, how do you fly a plane? You wouldn't sit in a room like this for about 40 hours listening to me lecture to you using a PowerPoint on how to fly a plane. You actually get in a simulator for thousands of hours. And that's what we do with our folks. We create demonstrations that are followed by simulations. I'm confident in telling you, 90% of our training is activity-based. Of the 16 weeks of training that we deliver, only 2 days we use a PowerPoint. And it's supplemented by a 30-page activity book. The rest is all simulations. Following that, we're going to create e-learning opportunities that's based on our classroom simulations. And as I go through towards the end of my presentation, I'm going to give you 1 or 2 examples of what that looks like. And what I am very excited about, next step, we want to create, so firms, a lot of firms look at this as a cost. Our firm looks at it as an investment. I'm looking down the road, a new revenue stream. And I know our CEO would be very happy with that. So to start out, I had to design a curriculum. And I'm just going to talk about audit service line. What we did for tax and accounting and consulting is the same. We had to design a curriculum for all our auditors, regardless of what specialty they would go into. So developing a well-rounded auditor who then specializes in a segment. That was actually a challenge. The design is a general audit curriculum for everyone, regardless of segment, and then I call them spin-offs or tangents, where you specialize in one of our 3 segments. Here's another way of looking at it. If it looks like a school of business curriculum, yeah, I'm not the brightest guy in the world, but that was pretty easy for me. That's a general curriculum. So regardless of where you specialize, everyone's going to go through the general audit curriculum. And then we have majors, if you will: financial services, manufacturing and distribution, and real estate. So that was the design piece of the curriculum. The needs analysis. Again, there's nothing there. The only thing I had was PowerPoints, death by PowerPoint, okay? So what's a typical needs analysis? For me, it's what's the topic? Put the flip charts up there. What's the topic? What's the subtopic? Accounting firms Typically, okay, you want to learn about inventory? From intern to senior partner, in a room, 8 hours, PowerPoint, talk, 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 talk. Okay? Inventory, learning, any topic isn't delivered that way. Greg Louganis, remember the famous diver? He talks about learning in layers. Okay? That's what we do. We learn in layers. So we get down to the objective and the outcomes per subtopic. And here's the criteria of decision making we had to consider. Because I'm dealing with 3 different segments, 5 different offices. Imagine kind of corralling those opinions into one curriculum. Does the learning goal go into the general or the segments? If so, what program, what level? Come up with the hours because it's activity-based, it's not lecture-based. In addition, this is what I knew we needed. We needed a summary of topics. Now that one I have here somewhere. It's 17 pages long. We were talking about it earlier. That summary, the summary is 17 pages long. And what I'm trying to show you is typically what accounting firms do is the inventory, that's everybody in one room for 8 hours. And what we did is we identified at what level of a staff, at what level of a senior. So in accounting firms, you go from staff 1 to staff 2, senior 1, senior 2, senior 3. And then what you can see here is some of those learning goals are in the general curriculum. Why? Because it's what every auditor should know. Even if you go with audit hedge funds, you need to know this about inventory. In addition, you can see that we have the hours. So if someone said, how much time are we spending on inventory? I can tell them that. We also needed audit curriculum. This is what I meant by multiple curriculums, by topic. Now that's a true curriculum. So to give you a little perspective, this is 145 pages. That's our audit curriculum. Then we have tax, then we have accounting, then we have consulting. This is by topic. I then sort it by level, or first by segment, then by level. So if someone calls up and says, Joe, are we teaching group audits? Yep. I could go to group audits, and I know when we're teaching it, what level, how much time, etc. From there, once we get to level, that generates our learning plans, or that's what I needed anyway. And then we needed a training schedule. Training, before I arrived, was who could get to the biggest conference room first. That was essentially a training schedule.
Still is.
Hey. So this may be a technology presentation. One of my 2.5 people who didn't know Access, but like technology, learned Access. There's no other way to capture this. This is our Access database. There's something hiding the topic, but it is current assets and inventory. And what I'm trying to highlight is this is a subtopic or module. And then we have all these input fields, whether it's segment, curriculum, tag is how we sort things. We have the day it's delivered in a program, the module number, how many hours. We can put the instructors in. We could outline the activities down below here, start date, end date. And what I'm passionate about is every subtopic, what's the objective, which is what we want the learners to be able to do, supported by the outcomes, which is how they will achieve that objective. And we have that for every single module. Let's show you the next one. If I can go back, one of the keys is just note the training program it's in. So I'm pointing to general audit training for staff 2 over here. The level, staff 2. The segment it stems from, whether it's in the general or not. And so as I go fast forward, this is now at the senior level. And so it's just in the M&D curriculum. So at that point, the financial services folks won't see this, the real estate folks won't see this, but that's okay, because they've gone through the general and they've got what they need. So if I walk into someone in an elevator who's manufacturing and distribution, but I audit hedge funds, I can have an intelligent conversation and say, hey, yes, let me introduce you to the partner in charge of M&D, and maybe we can help you. This is how we capture all our learning needs. I call it the most robust curriculum I've ever seen, simply because of the way we're able to capture, manipulate, and move our information around. So now I'm starting to show you some of the information we needed. I mentioned earlier the summary of topics, okay? So this is a at a glance, 17-page at a glance. So if someone wants to know what we're teaching, where we're teaching it, and how much time we're spending on it, we could easily identify that. And that's come up repeatedly. It helps us identify the gaps and overlaps that I experienced when we first started. This is the audit curriculum that I waved around. Okay, so if I were to pass this around, what you would see in this one topic, current assets inventory, on the right-hand side. So as our subject matter experts review this, because I'm not the subject matter expert, they want to say, okay, how and what are we teaching with inventory? They're going to go topic and then subtopic by subtopic, so they can see a progression within a topic, and then it's sliced. So in the right-hand corner, some of the key things. What's the audience? Staff 1. How many hours? 4. It's in the general curriculum, and it's in the general audit training for staff 1. Why did I put segment there? Because if someone asks, why is this in the general? I can say the M&D folks wanted it. It also helps us generate that segment-specific curriculum. Down below, why am I showing you this? You can see the progression, the layering, if you will. It's now in a staff 2. Sure, everyone gets it because it's in the general curriculum, but it's a different type of topic. It's a different learning goal. In short, as a staff 1, we teach you how to count the inventory. It's a little more complicated than that. And then as a staff 2, you get into how do we evaluate it. On the next slide, to the right, you should see a change. Meaning, at the senior level, this is just for M&D folks. So this is just for the folks that are majoring in manufacturing and distribution. Because in the right-hand side there, what's the program? M&D audit training for senior 1. Not financial services, not real estate. Anything we wanted folks to learn, everybody, would be in the general. And then you can see there's actually 2 learning objectives, if you will, in that senior 1 program. And if I kept going, you would see I took out the total hours for confidentiality, how much time we spend on inventory. But that's really important to us as a firm, because if I get feedback, our staff, our seniors are struggling in an area, I can go back and say, well, look how much time we are spending. It's either not enough, or if it seems like the right amount, maybe it's the activities we're using. Okay, we reflect on how we're teaching. So, we can then sort that massive document, which is by topic, by segment, then by level. And so this is just one example. It gives me, when I sort it by level, it gives me a program schedule, a module schedule. How does it get in this order though, right? Because it went from topic, and how do I sort all that? Well, there's stuff in our database, and we're able to sort it, and it spits out these modules for general audit training for senior 1, and it's 5 days. But I wish it doesn't spit out in this order. Luckily in accounting, we have a built-in design mechanism. An audit has 3 phases: the planning phase, which is in the room, the field work, which is in yellow, and then the blue is reported. So when I get all these modules that are just thrown at me, when I sort it, and it says training for senior 1, how do I put it in the proper learning order? How did they do it in the past, if they even did this? How do most accounting firms do it? What's your first name?
Betty.
Betty, when are you free this week? Tuesday at 9 o'clock. Okay, what do you know, Betty? And that's how accounting firms would design a program. There's no thought behind it. So what I do is I sit down and I look at this, and I follow our audit wheel, and I said, you know what? That first day is all about planning. All about planning. And if it looks like right now, we're going to teach it module by module by module, it's actually all integrated. They do 3 things on that day. They assess the risk of material misstatement. It's an accounting term. In other words, the financials might be incorrect. Based on that assessment, they're going to come up with an audit strategy. Third, they're going to present it to a panel of partners as if it's a planning meeting going forward. So it's not module by module by module. Yet, day 2 is module by module, because they don't necessarily link together, although they're part of field work. And when I get to day 3, it's one massive 8-hour project. We give them case studies, information. So it may look like, I'm being repetitive, a module step-by-step approach, but where we can integrate things, we do. And that's perfect for live classroom training. But try to visualize an e-learning experience and going through that audit wheel and going through these modules. Our materials are created so that can happen. Okay? Brian and I were talking yesterday. He's the talent management guy, I'm the L&D guy, we work together. And for the planning phase, it's not just about technical, it's about setting expectations for your staff. What do we talk about? Giving consistent feedback, communication. So that's also part of, Brian would be part of our panel and say, what are you doing in that planning meeting to improve the wellness, the happiness, I call it, of our auditors? This is the learning plan I talked about. So for this one particular program, it's about 17 pages long, but in all honesty, some of those modules are integrated, like this one here. If you take a look, or if you can see the materials and activities down below, they're all the same, because we're teaching those modules as though they're one. We're integrating the learning goals. But the key is, when I sit down with our instructors and our program leaders, we can actually map out the materials and activities we need, so that when I go into a planning meeting with our instructors, it's not a willy-nilly approach. We've thought about this. We know what the activities are. We're going to share it with our instructor team and teach them how to develop and deliver this. We could not do that had we not gathered the information the way we did in the database and have those very specific learning objectives and outcomes. Now, that did not happen overnight with 2.5 people, but we are, for every subtopic, we do have an objective and an outcome, and we're proud of that because it allows us to do what we do at a very high level. And boom, it's not a rush to our 13th floor conference room anymore, okay?
It's for the talent management guy.
It's the talent management, so, but this
We book a lot of technical training well in advance, so now I've learned I got to get ahead of this guy if I want to do any other trainings.
Yeah, I mean, training really was like that. If you woke up one day and thought there should be training, okay, we do it. We actually start planning training in November and December for the next year. Now this, the dates, to use an accounting term, are in perpetuity. They're never going to change. Because our subject matter experts, our leaders in the firm have said, these are the days. And so before, it's like, okay, when is training, this, that, the other thing? And sometimes I get heat, Joe, why'd you pick? I didn't pick it. All your audit leaders said, these are the dates of training. Now remember, this is just audit. We got this for tax, accounting, and consulting, and it really helps. And we send this out in January, okay? So everyone knows in advance when training is. What I'd like to leave you with, I would love to show you all the activities. I would love for you to do the activities. That's not going to happen. Actually, this activity would be fun. This is a 2-week program, okay? It's for our new hires. And the first 2 days, if you will, after orientation is called an Introduction to Mazars Audit Methodology. It takes you around that audit wheel. And then the next 5 days is a mock audit. And what I'd like to show you is one of the demonstrations, and then I'll talk to you a little bit about the simulation. Okay, here's the 2-day program. Pop quiz. What do you think this is? What do you think this is? And this? Okay. I showed this program. It's the only program where we use a PowerPoint. None others do. Every program has a training guide. Okay. So if I were to, don't plug in a light. So if you were to go through this, we've created content, if you will, the auditors have, and it looks like a quick reference guide. So we're not asking them to recreate the Internal Revenue Code or any audit code, but if you went through this, this is content for an e-learning platform. And then, I was working with an e-learning company, I sent them our 30-page activity book just for those 2 days. And their response was silence. And I said, what's the problem? And this may sound like I'm bragging, but I'm really proud of it. He said, this material is the most ready we've ever seen to convert. And I said, that was my goal. We're not going to lecture. We're going to take our 30-page activity book. You have the content to put the reading up. You have the activities, and what was cool was they took my one basic activity and gave me 3 different versions. What's left? We just need the voiceover. We just need the voiceover. So that's a very successful program. And can you imagine sitting down as a new hire before you even start and say, hey, let's go through the audit wheel. And you're now going to go module by module by module. In the classroom, they don't even know they're going through the modules, but they do know they're going through the audit wheel. What you don't see here is field work. How do you simulate field work? It's easy. We're accountants. Okay? What's the #1 skill set for an accountant? Does anybody know? Not numbers, no. Anybody know? Communication skills. Okay. So it goes back to, do you integrate, skill-based training? In every one of our trainings, I could tell you there's teamwork, team building, so you work in teams. There's communication. Our instructors role play the client, they role play the partner. There's analytical skills, there's writing skills, there's presentation skills, okay? That's all built into every single program, okay? So when I go and show you the field work, I'm gonna show you our demo, which demos, depending on the account, range anywhere from maybe 30 minutes to 45 minutes, depending on the complexity and how long they are. But I'm going to show you, anyone ever balance their checkbook? Okay, so I'm showing you how we audit the reconciliation of cash, which is essentially how an account, a client reconciles their cash. So we get from our clients what's called a client prepared schedule, and it looks like that. Okay, what's the first thing you do? Okay, you PBC it. Think about sitting in front of a terminal, someone voicing this over, and there's text on the side that you can also read. What is step 2? The only way we can do this is we have those detailed learning objectives and outcomes. So I showed you earlier inventory. For every account that we teach our folks how to audit, we call it a demo mock audit activity. And after 3.5 years, if I say, hey Brian, can you teach them how to audit whatever account? He says, is it going to be a demo mock audit? Yes. We're at that point versus showing them how to do it. Or they might say, is it an activity book? Example. We have different terms. Walkthrough. Okay. But this is a tab by tab. This is just a demonstration. So our instructors would be sharing, group learning, with all our learners how to go through this. And there's an introduction, such as why would we audit this account? There's a reason. And there's certain answers they have to give. There's a poster board that says, don't give me a rambling answer. It's got to be one of these 6 reasons. And then we say, okay, now how would you do this? And what information would you need? And that's kind of our intro. It's about a 5-minute quick intro to get them engaged. And say, great. Now let me show you how we do it at Mazars, and let's see if there's any difference. So as we walk through this, we're relating back to what they know, what they've been able to do, and eventually, we get to final. When an auditor gets the PBC, client prepared schedule, I call it at the end of the day, it looks like this. But try and just show this to anyone, it's like drinking from a fire hose. So we use this tabular approach. This is our demo. The simulation, all the materials that we need to do this, the reference material, the invoices, the bank statements, etc., we have. They're there. Now, if I'm role-playing and I've just demoed this for you, I would say now work with your engagement managers who are at your table. So we have new hires, about 40 of them, 10 tables, 4 at a table, engagement manager. Work with your engagement manager to now audit cash for XYZ company. And now, what's your first name?
Sandra.
So Sandra is an engagement manager. She may role play the client at her table. She may role play the manager of the engagement. And depending on the program, she may change, like over the days. If I'm new to this, oh, please be my manager. I don't want to deal with the client. And then over time, she's going to say, okay, I'm now the client. How would you interact with me? Is it just by email? How do I interact by email, conversationally? All that's built into the simulation, and we have all the materials to do that. So between the demo, which is about 35 minutes, they then spend about 3 hours going through the simulation, which Sandy is now going to review and leave review notes, and so they have to go back in and check their work. It is no different been an actual client. So here's my saying for audit training. This is your first audit. When you go out to the job, it's your second. For the tax folks, we just did 1040 training. This is your first 1040. So when you go to the client, it's your second. And everything we do, that's our mindset. So how do we do? Where are we in the goals and ideals I had? Well, yep, we do that. And we do a great job of it. In fact, I consider this intellectual property. I won't share it with anybody. That's a lot of work. There's a lot of people that would love to have their hands on this. Friends of mine are vendors who deliver training. I've shared it with them, and they're like, boy, I wish I had this. Multiple curriculums, sure, within a service line, as well as all the other service lines. So I know there's a lot of paper in my office, but it works. It really works. Learning plans, schedules for every single program that are very detailed. So we sit down with our instructors, our program leaders, and we know what activities we're building or have built and want to revise for the future. We're really flexible. Take one of those modules, go into our database, change a tag, change the name of this, that, the other thing, and believe me, if you're not really specific, it stands out. So we are able to do that. The 16 weeks of training, again, very confident. 90% is activity-based. I can't think of one type of pure lecture. If anything, we have a discussion. Student-centered learning where we're calling out of you what we want you to learn. So maybe it's even 100%. This is what's left. Convert. Not develop, convert. What we've done, which is much different. And why did that company say it's the most ready? Because they get a bunch of PowerPoints all the time. There's no design, they're just lecture points. So we are ready to do that. It's our goal over the next, I will say, year or two to start this process and start delivering this. And my personal goal is the following. I'd love to have a conference and invite smaller firms or even Mazars Global to our training and deliver it. Okay. I'm getting the 1 minute left sign. So welcome any questions, comments, suggestions. Hi.
So about how many hours of training do you have? Right, so if you got to do 40 hours every year, when do you start repeating?
When do we start repeating?
Right, so if I'm in a particular line, how many hours do you have for that given line? And if I'm with the firm for 5 years, am I coming back to that same training?
Yeah, so if I backtrack a little bit, I'll try to go to the schedule. And while I do, so if you're in audit, every year you're going to go to the general audit training, which is in the summer. And the new hire training is 2 weeks. Every program after that is a week long. Then in the fall, you're going to go to your segment specific. So let me go back real quick. It's a great question. Here's our training. So audit is a lockstep curriculum. So you're going to start out in September with 2 weeks of training. As a staff 2, there's actually another 2 weeks. Notice the dates. And if you're in M&D and you're in financial services and I'm in real estate, we've gone through all those trainings together. We're also going to go through the Senior 1 training together. But then when the fall comes around, what did I say you were? If you're real,
I don't know.
you know the breakdown. So this is where the 3 of us now go our separate ways.
Okay.
And so if you've just completed last year, General Audit for Senior 1, and say Financial Services for Senior 1, this year, it's Senior 2. You can take General Audit for Training Senior 2, Financial Services for Senior 2.
And is that correlated to my progression through the firm, or is that just a... Okay.
Yep. It's funny, there's something called an audit program, and it tells you what you need to do in each account. And if you look at these audit programs, it's not like a staff does one program, a senior does another. When does those inventory, at what level do they need to be learned? So I would challenge them when I was documenting that. Well, I know it's the what, but who does that? Is that a staff 2? Is that a senior 1? And that's how we get this. So it's very, very targeted.
So no one will ever be going through the same curriculum twice?
No. Could they? Sure. People ask, can I take more than one segment? Sure. But the idea is this is a progression. Think of it as I hate to say it, a staircase of learning.
eventually, once they get to a certain point, then they become the curriculum leaders and the facilitators.
Oh, and that's how they continue the,
Yeah.
yeah, that's not it.
Yeah, so as you progress, our general rule is you have to be a manager before you're in training for 2 reasons. Until that point, you don't know enough. And also, the way accounting firms work, you have more control over your schedule. Staff and seniors are pulled every which way.
Joe.
So, yes.
Have you considered, I know this is a very robust design.
Thank you.
And congratulations for the detailed introduction. How you're moving to a more digitalized, a lot of emerging generations are coming to the accounting firms, transforming the way that accounting and tax practices are moving. How you're thinking about gamification, micro-learning, video learning, because most of the generations are not like the baby boomers or ex-accountants that are very traditional in the way they learn. These generations are really different, okay? And digital natives will not even stick to it. You're moving aggressively into our activity-based and experiential learning, which is wonderful. How you're thinking as the leader of learning for your firm?
Couple of different ways. One is I like the group learning because people from other offices come and meet and they're a cohort model and there's that bonding that you just can't get anywhere else. But when you look at our modules, can we slice them, the outcomes, into 10-minute? I was actually thinking ahead. The challenge we have is, will it be for credit to meet our compliance requirements or will it not? But that's secondary. But if you ask me, can I do what they call micro or nano learning? Yeah, I'm just going to go to my module. I'm going to pick out one of the outcomes and let's just do that. It still goes back to that organization and structure. Because if we just have inventory, and that's what we're going to learn, I can't do micro learning. Good question.
We have a global, well, I would say, with Mazars Global, there's a push towards finding a better balance with our, what we refer to as bite-sized learning and in-person learning. There's still a strong desire, in fact, what we've noticed is actually a stronger desire with newer hires to have more in-person learning than video-based, which is a little counterintuitive, but I think people at companies in general for the last 10 years have tried to go so far towards the micro-learning that there have been fewer and fewer opportunities for in-person training. So we're really trying to find the right balance. And so now it's about, it's about the desire of the employee, but it's also, let's face it, about cost. So we're based in New York City. When Joe and his team host this kind of training, you're talking about people coming in from all over the country, flying in, staying in New York City hotels, and for weeks at a time. This is a tremendous investment. So can we take 2 weeks in person and make it 1 week in person, and maybe the pre-work can be done on, we've got a lot of figuring out to do. But from a cost standpoint, when you think of the number of employees, and obviously the vast, especially in our industry, they have to do these trainings for their continuing education credits. If we can cut it in half, the amount of money that goes into this is astounding.
Take that 2-day program. I know it can be cut down to 8 hours. A benchmark, Deloitte. They're the standard bearer in accounting, and maybe in all firms. Their tax L&D has 40 people. A friend of mine works in that department. They're just starting to investigate what you're talking about. So I'm happy where we are, me and my 2.5-person team, versus, we want to go there. And when I say we have the best training, when we have lateral hires that come from the Big Four and say it's the best, I'm like, thank you. So we're going to get there, and we're right in line with.
Yeah, but it's a very interesting concept, because as we push towards gamification and micro-learnings and all this, we're getting pushback from people that say, we actually don't necessarily want that. So I don't know if others are experiencing that, but we are. Yeah, you're experiencing that too?
Healthcare and nurses by nature are not real keen on e-learning, and so we struggle for scalability. We need to do some things via e-learning, not just remote classrooms, but we see the same challenge with that specific work group, even the younger nurses.
Yeah, and you
So,
mentioned
yeah.
scalability. That's our challenge.
Well-
I mean, our firm is in growth mode. That's great. I mean, it's great news. But with that comes challenges. I mean, we're 932 employees, and by the end of 2020, we might be 1,600. And I was saying this earlier to Jim. That's from a talent management standpoint, that's equally exciting and terrifying at the same time. But how do we keep delivering to the level that Joe has created? And balance cost, scalability, and the balance between the desire for gamification and video versus the in-person connection. Because everybody wants connection, and it's hard to get that through just sitting at your computer.
To me, it's easy. We convert the demos to e-learning. They can be advanced prep, reinforcement, blended learning, whatever you want. Then you come together. By the way, Florida Gulf Coast University, Fort Myers, yes, that's where we're going. I've already got it planned out, so don't take my spot, don't look at my schedule. But yeah, it's not bad. You know what's funny? Take these, the young learners, and even the older ones. They have these electronically. Where do they take notes? Electronic version or hard copy? Hard copy.
We use a very similar approach
Yeah.
to you, so it's the teachers can do
Any other, and I'm happy to stick around. Are there any other comments, questions? Thank you, it's been fun for me. I hope you enjoyed it.